it looks like Daryl Henderson's going to be out with a concussion possibly. So I'm just like, you know, we were just talking about our fantasy woes.
Yeah, all the woes.
Yeah. What's going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in again to Real Talk by Our Stories, Your Legacy. We're back with another fire round episode. Always coming at with you live, whatever we're feeling, just kind of like wanting to talk about or just feeling inspired to talk about. So, language is all around us. And then at the root of all, it's one of those greatest forms of communication because it's direct and, it binds us in a culture of shared understanding. It can also be barriers too, but it doesn't have to be if we take the time to learn and try to understand other languages. And so in this fun episode, in this fun and quick episode, we're just going to have a discussion about languages in general and, which ones we would love to be fluent in, excluding English, because obviously, as you're listening, English is our primary dominant language or first language that we're speaking, as you clearly hear. And why it interests us. And some of the topics we're discussing is kind of quickly like, what do we think are the most dominant spoken languages in the world? Excluding English, why do we want to choose? What language would we prefer to speak over another and why? And then kind of like one of my favorite topics is, I don't know, for me, I like listening to music in other languages sometimes too. It's almost a different experience than kind of hearing it in your own language in terms of interpretation and things. And so we're going to talk about music in other languages. Without further ado, before we begin, we're going to do a quick vibe check around the room and kind of see who is on today's episode. Of course, you have me, and then you have my brother Tyler. How's it going with you?
Going well. Just another day, another dollar type of situation today. It was kind of one of those things with the weather today. Actually, just this whole weekend, I would say that we have like this crazy storm that's kind of hitting us in Washington up here in the Pacific Northwest. We're getting a lot of rain, so much so that all of our rivers, well, at least the Puyallup River, is flooding in some cities and all of that stuff. So we've seen a good amount of rain drop over the weekend. And then of course with that, we've also had like these monsoon type of winds coming in as well. So, anywhere from 20 to some gusts were like 50 miles an hour, they were saying. So it's been a little crazy. I felt like I was going to get blown over walking into my office this morning. Our office actually lost power today because of that. So it's kind of crazy, but I'm doing well. I went out and did something crazy. I ran in the wind after I got home, just because my afternoon meeting got canceled. There was nothing else I could do. No emails were coming in, so I went out and ran 3 miles in the wind. Resistance training for sure.
Jeez. Yeah. And then thanks for that, man. Good to have you on. Brother Zavon, how's it going with you, man?
Not bad. Same shit, different day. The usual.
Usual as always, man. It's good to have you on after a few episodes without you, but, we don't take it for granted. So it's always nice to have you back on and live with us. All right, let's get right into it. So I'm opening this up to both you guys, just a quick, fun, appetizer question. So without looking it up, what do you guys think? And I'll tell you guys the answer after you guys. Obviously, I have the answer, but just get us warmed up. What do you guys think are the top 3 most primary spoken languages around the world?
I imagine this is a very quick answer from both of us, right?
Yeah.
And this is outside of English.
No, it includes English. So we're gonna start with just kind of like a general icebreaker. What do you guys think of your top 3 in no order? But what are your top 3 most spoken languages around the world right now? Just to clarify, Primary spoken language.
Primary spoken language.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like English is up there. I would say English. I would say Chinese, probably Mandarin. If we're talking about dialects, Mandarin's probably one of them. And then I would say Spanish. If we're excluding English, I would say French. But because we're including English, French is just on the outside of the top 3 for me.
Nice. Zavon, what about you? What do you think are the top 3 languages spoken around the world?
I mean, based on like my experience of like speaking Spanish and learning it, like I already know Spanish is up there, English, and I know Mandarin for sure. So, I mean, I already kind of knew just from like background what I've learned in the past.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's just a quick little intro to it for our listeners. But yeah, I mean, you guys hit on the head. I mean, it's one of those things where Mandarin, in no particular order, English, Mandarin, and Spanish, you just do a quick search of like top 3 languages in the world. Cool. And it kind of like leads us into kind of like the next one now. You know how we do. We always start with something easy and then kind of jump into a little more brain teaser type question. So, I'm opening this up to you guys. Excluding English now. If you can choose to be fluent in one language, and it could be any language, what language would you want to be fluent in and why?
I can hop in. I would say, I'm going to give 2 answers here, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say, if I could be fluent in one language, that would probably be the most helpful for me in talking to a lot of people just in America. I would say Spanish is probably going to be up there, just because that is kind of like the second highest universal language spoken across the world. So many countries speak Spanish, or some dialect of Spanish. So I would say that for that reason. But I would say, personal reasons, if I was more fluent in Japanese, that would be my go-to, just because I am Japanese, and Japanese was definitely one of those things I learned growing up. So my grandparents always talked to me, my grandmothers, both my grandmothers are Japanese. My grandpas are not, but my grandmothers would speak Japanese just around the house and to me. So for me, I kind of learned the language when I was around them a little bit. But being in America, obviously, and my parents not speaking fluent Japanese, they obviously know terms and phrases and all of that stuff, but they definitely did not speak it fluently. I lost most of that language. I can understand it a little bit. I think a lot of our generation, if they aren't fluent in kind of their native language, I guess you could say, they can at least understand it a little bit, mostly because their parents or grandparents, if they lived with them, probably spoke it a lot around the house. So I think for me, I would definitely want to learn Japanese more fluently. Like, I can definitely understand some of the things that my grandma talks to me about. But there's definitely times where she, just because she's getting a little bit older too, we find that she starts talking in Japanese, like trying to describe something. And I'm just like, let me try to think of the best way to describe this to you. When she was younger, it was a little bit easier to describe something in English to her. But I think as she's getting older, she's kind of reverting back to Japanese things, or the language at least a little bit more when she's trying to explain something. And it's like, what? You've never talked about it that way before. But it's just also part of the thing of getting older too. So to communicate with my grandmother, but then also my second part of my family who all live in Japan, all my distant cousins and second cousins and all of my aunts, uncles, whatever, who live in Japan and everything. It would be nice to kind of talk with them just about what's been going on in America, because once my grandma passes, then no one over here is really tied to them as much as we are now. So it would be dope just to kind of talk to them. And then even just visiting Japan, I don't feel as much as a tourist in Japan. I would still be a tourist, obviously. I grew up in America. But having conversations and being able to navigate Japan would be awesome. Japan's a very beautiful country. It's been far too long for me visiting. So to go back and actually be able to speak the language fluently, I think would be pretty awesome.
Nice. Thanks for that, man. Savon, how about you, man? Excluding English, if you had to be fluent in one other language or multiple, kind of like Tyler broke it down for us with his two choices, what language would you choose to be fluent in?
For me, it would definitely be Tagalog, just because like I never really learned Tagalog growing up. I mean, why not learn the language of my heritage and background, And I would also include Spanish. I'm not fluent in Spanish. I mean, I took like 6 years of it, but like by now I forgot it all because like the last Spanish class I took was like freshman year of college. So I would definitely love to be more fluent in Spanish. So I mean, that's primarily it.
Yeah.
Just those two.
Yeah. My answer, I mean, as you guys know, I'm not like studying it hardcore, but I've been pretty consistent on the app Duolingo trying to learn Spanish. Not to toot my own horn, but I've been like 1,200 days straight according to the app, which is pretty cool because it's you only learn so much while you're on it. So even though 1,200 days straight, I'm still probably at primary school level of Spanish, but it's cool because this kind of segues into just generally talking about learning a different language in general. It's like one of those things where it's so fun to learn another language, and if maybe I put more time into it, I could probably be a lot more better. But at 1,200 days straight from a game app, almost pretty much Duolingo is almost like a game. I learned how to better read, Spanish. It doesn't hurt that Spanish is, in terms of its alphabet, is pretty similar to English. And there's a lot of like patterns that are kind of like, parallel to English as well. But Spanish would be the language that I choose outside of the motherland language of, Lao. Obviously, same with Zavon. If you had to choose another language, why not be the language of, your heritage? But in terms of practicality, if it can't be English, Spanish is, probably the next most, primarily spoken language around the world. And so that was one that I would choose to definitely do because I love it. And it seems like, I don't know, maybe, you can correct me or our listeners can correct me, but Spanish, it seems like almost all of its words and the way that its language is constructed is like in a rhyming pattern, things rhyme. With the O and the A ending and whatnot. I mean, it goes deeper than that, but it's just like, it's, at least for me, I haven't tried learning another language yet. Maybe after Spanish, I would like to learn maybe Korean or Japanese, French maybe. But at least in Spanish, what helps me learn is finding patterns in the language. And so that's maybe the same in every other language too. Who knows?
Yeah. And I would say that, for you, if you're learning Spanish, I would say that you mentioned French as well. And yeah. I took 5 years of French. But like Zavon, I have forgotten most of it. That was a requirement of high school.
Right.
But you'll notice, like, if you start looking at French, obviously it's very closely tied to Spanish. Mm-hmm. So it's actually kind of an easy transition over. There's obviously small differences, but, colonizing.
Nice. Right. Right.
So one of those things. So thanks.
Now kind of like heading to our final question tonight, and this one's kind of like near and dear to me, and and surprisingly, as close as I am with Tyler and Zavon, and we love music. But I guess I never really asked about like, like we all know each other's kind of like favorite genres of music, but then we never kind of went further in terms of asking, have you listened to songs that are, sung primarily in other languages? And so kind of our last question tonight is like, one, do you listen to songs in other language? And if so, which language or languages, and why are they, why do you like listen to them? Or if you don't already listen to songs in other languages, what's stopping you from doing so, or why not? And kind of the answers I'm looking for example, if why not you don't listen to it, it could just be that you haven't tried it, or maybe, just kind of like how people kind of like equivalent to watching international shows or international movies, you just don't want to, since you don't understand it, you don't want to, it doesn't interest you, so it's kind of like whatever you decide. So open it up to both of y'all. The question, do you listen to other songs in other languages? If so, which languages and why? Why do you enjoy it? Or if not, what's stopping you from listening to songs in other languages?
Yeah, I can answer that. I would say for me, primarily when I listen to music, I would say that if I were to pick another language, I would say probably K-pop, Korean, just because that's so mainstream now. And that's it's a very interesting kind of feel to it. There's a lot of songs out there that actually go where how it's constructed is they will sing majority in Korean, but then some in English. So then it's like they're, buying to both sides of the world at that point. And it's just really catchy. But I think growing up, I definitely listened to Japanese music, like J-pop and all that stuff as well. And you can say, blame, whatever. I can put that on watching a lot of anime growing up. Just because, like, obviously, I mean, anime is huge in America anyways, but Japanese culture, anime, cartoons, all that stuff were just huge. My grandma introduced all of that to me when I was younger. I got hooked. So a lot of those songs, which are very catchy intros, usually either pop, rock, or like a very soft, soothing, kind of sad type of song. If you're thinking of anime, those are the three that usually pop up. That's kind of what got me into like Japanese type of music or Japanese rap even. So growing up, I would say I listened to Japanese music. I listened to some Korean pop now just because it's so mainstream, BTS and all that. And then as far as other languages, I definitely listened in high school when we were in French class. Our professor, the sweet little old lady, would put on like French rap, and then she would just like sing along to it. So we were like, what the heck? This is really crazy. But we definitely listened to that. And then, Spanish music, just because I feel like, you go to a lot of, different clubs and any of that. It's very, very much party style type of music, I feel like, or at least that's what they play mostly. And that's what's mainstream. So that's what kind of I listen to. As far as like diving deeper into different genres of other language music, I can't say that I do that too often. I just nowadays I just listen to what's kind of mainstream. But yeah, if you pull up my Spotify, I think if you go to my account, my profile, I'm pretty sure I have a Japanese playlist on there full of different random songs that I've found and picked up over the years. So I have a playlist. It's there. How much I listen to it nowadays? Maybe not so much, but it's there.
Nice. Savon, how about you?
I mean, I primarily only listen to like English speaking songs. I mean, the only other artist I can think of that I listen to that sings like some a different language other than English is like Psy, or yeah, like some K-pop artists, but not like on a frequent basis. But yeah,
Is it because do you feel like it doesn't match kind of like your genre of music that you already enjoy?
yeah, it's just musical preference. I mean, I'm open to listening to anything. Honestly, it's just I just happen to listen to English speaking artists.
Mhm. Nice. Yeah. For me, kind of my final thoughts on it. Kind of between both of what you guys said. But for me, you guys know my genre of music. I love slow paced songs. Not like very slow. We're not talking about like classical, orchestra music. I'm talking about like kind of like R&B. Kind of like a you still got your hi hats, like you still got your percussions and stuff, but maybe at a slower BPM. You know, than like a club song. But I love like love songs, like R&B or sung melodic notes, from like Adele to like a little bit more shoot Maxwell or John Legend, kind of like in between, or maybe even some modern like upbeat kind of like give me like I don't know, Bryson Tiller. I don't know. I'm just thinking of like names now, like kind of like R&B that just has like kind of a moody beat, but it's not that slow, but it still have a higher BPM, but not as high as like club songs and stuff like that. And so kind of I do listen to a lot of songs in other languages, but primarily outside of English, primarily Spanish, Japanese, and Korean. And speaking of my favorite type of genre, it's like, kind of the cheesy saying that love is the same in any language or in any culture. Even though I don't wholly understand like what's being said in like in Spanish, Japanese, or Korean, the way that it's sung, and the mood of the beat of the composition still spring the same, right? The same, it's all that type of like a romantic type of vibe. And so that's typically why I enjoy listening to the songs. And maybe what makes me enjoy like songs that I don't understand but still feel the vibe of the melodic notes is including how the lyrics are sung is like, it's like you're like listening to an entire like instrumental, even though someone is literally singing lyrics, but because I don't understand what they're saying, it's kind of like I'm going along with like just listening to instrumental, so I don't really get caught up in the lyrics as I would if I'm listening to English, right? And so yeah, my final thoughts on this before I ask you guys your final thoughts. My final thoughts on this is, one question that I like to bring up for fun is, what do you think is, in your opinion, and this is a rhetorical question, I'm gonna answer it myself, but when I would ask like what I think is the most, what languages is the most, I guess the best language for music, does that make sense? Like, like what languages sound better when it's in music, which is subjective. But for me, I totally think that Japanese and English are like tied for third place, just because like, listening to it, it sounds very more staccato. If you're listening to Japanese and English, it just seems more staccato, even though you have some artists who could just make things sound very smooth, but just the language itself is staccato. Spanish, I say is like number two, just because like how I was mentioning earlier, like I feel like its language is already it's already in rhyme already, so things just kind of come naturally with it. But for me, I think Korean is number one, because if you listen to, I mean, this is outside of K-pop culture. Like I'm talking about like if you're listening to like a ballad from Korean, it just seems so smooth. It just seems like the way they sing it just comes so naturally with music. And so that's kind of my final take on languages and music. Before we wrap it up, Tyler, Zavon, you guys have any final thoughts, final say? Doesn't have to be on music, just languages in general.
I don't think I have any final thoughts. I think honorary mention, I guess you could say, for languages, American Sign Language. If we're talking about languages, speaking languages, let's talk about actual sign language too.
Yeah.
Just because, a lot of people would be like, oh, you don't really run into that many people that, speak it or would need to speak it. But, you'd be surprised how many people are out there. It's like, I always feel bad too, because like, I don't necessarily know it. And I run into someone every day who's deaf. So she always tries to like, act out what she's trying to say, or she'll write it down and I'll have to answer it for her that way. But yeah, so I'm just like, oh, like that's definitely a language I would say that would be a runner up as far as like something to be kind of fluent in,
Right.
I've definitely considered brushing up on it, because it's something I learned a little bit in elementary school, but brushing up on it, I think would be helpful in some situations for sure. Especially like, interacting with the one person every day that I see, just even having a small conversation with her. So that would be kind of cool. But that's all I have, with that.
Thanks, man. Thanks for doing that. Zavon, any final thoughts on languages?
No, that's pretty much it from my end.
Thanks, man. All right. Well, that's it for tonight. Like I said, short and sweet episode, quick discussion. And so we're going to wrap it up here. As we always say, take this question, run it by your friends and family and discuss it, or maybe just ponder over the thought of it. Most importantly, it's always keeping your brain working, keeping the dialogue going. That's how we learn and grow. So we appreciate y'all for another week of joining us in spirit or wherever you are. It's another thing that we're going to just keep working on ourselves, keep improving, and we'll be back again next week at the same time, same place. So have a good night. See you then.
Later.